So we'll start. Good afternoon, everyone. I, Hemangi Jakaria, on behalf of Shine and Anchor, Kachi Engineering College, Mumbai, India, welcome you all in Hybrid Webinar Series 2.0, Innovative and Emerging Technology in the Field of Research. This international series is hosted by Sakek Research Cell. Let's begin the series of international webinar by seeking a divine blessings for Ma Saraswati. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to invite the one who gives guidance and direction to every student and faculties in the college. He has been a guiding light and always encouraged us to give our best. He is none other than Dr. Bhavesh Patel, sir, Principal, Sakek. Sir is associated with 20 plus international conferences and has written 5 books and 3 patents. Filed Sakek's first Indian patent titled as System and Method for Cybersecurity, Forensic Analyzer and Extraction of Information as Tool to Detect and Prevent Cybersecurity. Sir, I request you to inaugurate the hybrid webinar series 2.0 with your kind words.
Yeah. Thank you, Imangi. Very good afternoon and happy afternoon to all of you. As the name suggests, hybrid webinar series on innovation and emerging technology. The name itself is innovative. I welcome all of you, that is all the faculty members, students, and the participants. And also congratulate the research cell for having been looked and being executing this hybrid international webinar series. Is during this pandemic time, we have come across lot of innovation and lot of technology that how it can be used in other than what we can even think. And it benefits to the applicants then beyond our imagination. There are so many things that comes in our mind, but how to put it on a paper, how to create a product, and majority of the product fails because of lacking knowledge in converting them into appropriate marketing strategy and forwarding them to the general public who can use it. We are fortunate to have the first session by Dr. Ramakrishna Sharma, who is a well-known eminent personality in this area, and all other speakers also. Few of them are from the international universities from other countries. So I'm sure that we will able to extract the benefit of the knowledge that they have gained, the expertise that they have gained after the years together, and we will able to get it in a short span and will be utilized for development of our country and across the globe. So I wish every participant to create their own network through which the new innovative vibrations will be carried forward for the use of human mankind and the society at a larger scale. So all the best in this innovative and emerging technology learning in a different way. All the best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining this session. So, going forward, it is a great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Ramakrishna Sharma, who is going to talk on machine learning meets physics. Dr. Ramakrishna is a postdoc at CMS, CERN, Geneva, and is subtitled this PhD thesis entitled Search for Coupling Through Vector Scattering and Development of the GEM Detector at CMS Experiment. He has worked on both aspects of experimental particle physics, that is, physics analysis and detector related work. Sir enjoys coding and scripting. Sir uses C, C++, Python, shell script and HTML for coding and scripting. We are extremely honored to have your esteemed presence with us. We would like to honor Dr. Ramakrishna Sharma sir with a sapling as a token of gratitude from Sakek Research Cell. Sir, please
Thank you very much for
Yes.
this.
I am very sure this 1 hour session will be the best technology session for all of us. Before handing over the session to the speaker, I have few announcements for the audience. Participants who have not registered, please do register. The link will be provided in the chat box. All participants, if you have any query in between the session, please write them in the chat box. Frequently asked questions will be taken at the end of the session. And also, at the end, feedback link will be provided in the chat box. Participant will receive e-certificate on the information provided in the feedback form. Hence, please mention your name and email ID correctly. You can also take a selfie and upload it. Now, I request our honorable speaker, Dr. Ramakrishna Sharma, sir, to please take over and start the session. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Hemangi, for the introduction and words, and thank you very much, Bhavesh ji, for his encouraging words. And I'm especially interested by his words about the public benefit by utilizing the research, latest research, and just. So also I'm going to mention that thing at the end of my slide about how the public can be benefited from these things. So, okay, so now I should start. So can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
It should be full screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so today I'm going to to talk about the machine learning meets the physics. So here the physics I will especially talk about the particle physics, physics in which area I am working on. So I will start with just very brief definition of the machine learning. I'm not going to the details of the basic definition of machine learning because I think you all are from this from the technical institutes, and you should, as I know you guys knows details about the machine learning. So just for the sake, I will start with what is machine learning, very general definition. So basically, it all starts with a how we grab information, useful information from the data that we have. So generally, earlier what we were doing is we were just trying to make a mathematical formulation from the data that we have. So we sit and we try to get some mathematical formula which can describe, or which should be able to describe our predictions, our experimental data, as well as the prediction what we are doing. But most of time it is quite complicated to find those mathematical formulation, complicated mathematical equation which is hidden behind our data. For example, selling the products on the different e-websites like Amazon, Walmart, eBay, etc. So machine learning holds the key to this problem, because and basically the machine learning gives the computer the ability to learn from data without explicitly programming them, without saying that which mathematical formula they are going to be followed. So it try to grab those hidden informations by itself. So the mathematical model learned from the data that are characterized various patterns, regularities, relationship among the different variables in the system. In the same way, we human learn and improve our understanding. And this machine learning is everywhere. For example, how Spotify gives you suggestion of what to listen to next, or how Siri answer your questions. So now, as a experimental particle physics, what we have is all data. Now you might be wondering why I mentioned data in physics. So before going to the data, I will just say briefly about the physics. So what is physics? So the simplest definition of the physics is a study of nature. So whether we see how apple falls from the tree, or we see we are fascinated by the nice rainbow. So all these are the whatever we see in the nature, and we study it is the physics. We study it through the physics. So we study nature by analyzing the experimental data and to check our current understanding of the nature and able to specify, okay, is our understanding is correct or not. So we learn in an iterative way. For example, is the formula given by Newton correct, which describes how an apple falls from the tree? The solution? Okay, let's do an experiment, collect data and analyze it. So how we do the experiment? The experiment is basically very simple. Just to drop an apple from top of the ground, and when it hits the ground, just do this experiment many times and record the time. And then try to use this experimental information and try to compute this using the Newton's formula. So if both are in agreement, then we say, okay, wow, like this formula is fine. Like there could be a three possibility. Okay, this is exactly matching the results that we predicted from the formula. Another, it is completely different. The third scenario is in between. It is not too much different, not matching, but there's minor difference. So if it is completely different, we say, okay, this formula is completely wrong. We need to think some different idea. This idea is not going to work. If it is minor difference, then we say, okay, this formula seems to be correct, but there should be some correction, something we are missing. So we should add something to it. So we generally, the experiment and theory, we try to formulate a theory, then we try to check using the experiment, and sometimes we formulate the theory by looking at experiment. For example, the theory of gravitational formula is formed after the experiment happened, like the apple fall from the tree. So now, one of the most sought after questions of all humankind from the start is like, where did it all come from? The time from when the human being originated, we ask this question, where did it all come from? And even now, we are seeking for the answer, where did it all come from? So even though we understand a lot, but still we need to understand a lot. And another question is okay, we want to know from what are the basic entities of the universe from which everything is made up of. Like I have in this cartoon, the person is saying, I have discovered what I believe to be the elementary basic particle, a small stone. So if you remember very basic, earlier we were thoughting, okay, it could be made up of a small stone. Then as the time passed, we thought, okay, it is the atom from which everything is made up of. But now we know the atom is not the basic entities. They are much smaller particles with which many things are made up of. So now here comes by answering this basic elementary particles. What are the basic elementary particles? A new branch of physics originated named a high energy physics, in which area I am working. So this is a branch of physics which deals with the study of basic building block of matter. So what are the basic entities with which everything is made up of? So those basic entities should not be made from anything else. So that should be the main entity. So in the high energy physics, there is a theory which is a standard model of that we call a standard model of particle physics. So this theory explains quite well the nature that we observe, and it says like as I here a couple of different particles. So this you can say the periodic table of particle physics. So in chemistry, it is too much complicated. It's quite hard to learn. I remember everything, but here it's quite simple. And these are the basic entities using everything is made up of. So this is the periodic table of particle physics. So here, like the everyday particle is basically come from these particles, and basically all these are divided into several different types. Like these are the quarks, like the protons and neutrons are made up of the quark, basically up and only these two quarks, up and down. And electron, you all know, must have heard this electron from many times. And apart from these, there are different categories, which we say the force particles. So one of, as I said, the question that what are the basic entities of matter, basic building block of matter? Okay, so the building block of matter are these. But now, okay, once we have the building block, but how they are interacting with each other so that it forms the universe in which we live in. So these are the different force carriers. So these are the force carriers using which they interact among themselves and make up this universe. Now, the one more question arises, okay, some particle have low mass, some particle have high mass, but how the masses is coming to each particle, how they get their mass? So this question was long sought question, for which the people suggested that there should be an additional candidate, which is known as the Higgs particle, or pretty well known by the name of the God particle. So we say it as a God particle. It is just for the public popularization. Why we say it God particle? Because what we see is this is the Higgs field. Higgs field is present everywhere, and how these particles interact with the Higgs field, it decides the mass. So I'm not going to the too much detail into this. Now moving further. So now still, as I said, we understand a lot how universe form, how it works, and it all started with a big bang, and then it follows the time, and with time earlier it was just quark gluons plasma. I mean, these are the quarks and gluons. Earlier it was just the quark gluon plasma, then the nuclei formed, and as the time slowly passes by now it forms finally the universe in which we live in. But if we go back, then based on our calculation, we get to know that the same amount of matter and antimatter was created at the start of the universe. I mean, the Big Bang. Now, what we see now is only matter survived. I mean, we, the stars, all these things are matter. So what we see is only matter. Then the question is why? Why we are seeing only matter? There is no antimatter. Where all the antimatter gone? We don't know it. We are still trying to find the answer. Next question is, when the universe was formed, based on our calculation, whatever the total amount of energy it should be. So out of the total, the only part that we are able to see is 5%. All the visible in universe, including us, accounts for only 5%. So where is the rest amount? So based on our theoretical predictions, it says that 68% is something called dark energy. I'm not going into the detail of this thing. And remaining 27% is something known as dark matter. So what happened to this? We did not see any evidence of these things. So what happens to this? So we are still looking for the answers. So to get to the answer of these questions and many more questions, experiments at CERN was carried out, and in particular the LHC is designed to answer these kind of important questions. So as I just a couple of minutes back mentioned, that we found a Higgs particle in 2012, and for which also the Nobel Prize was awarded. But Still, we have a question, did we find the Higgs of the standard model which we are looking, or it is something else and it is misrecognized as the Higgs boson? So we are quite sure that it should be the standard model, but still there are few % doubt left. It could be something else. So we are still looking for the answer of this popular question. Why the matter dominates over antimatter, why we see only matter in the today universe and where all the antimatter is gone. Now, do we understand the primordial state of matter after the Big Bang, before proton or neutron formed? I mean, this is basically at the start of the universe. This we see as say as a primordial, because at this point of time only the quark-gluon plasma was existed. There are no atoms, no nuclei were there. So still we did not understand it quite well, how it worked and how the sorry, how it formed the protons. So we did not understand quite well the mechanism at the very early universe. Now, what is the nature and composition of dark matter that I just mentioned in my last slide? So these are the many different questions for which we are aiming to get some answers or some insight, at least in the experiment that we are performing here at CERN. Now, the question is how we are going to explore the area of these particles that we are unable to see. So as you all know, with microscope we can see a tiny bacteria. So you can assume here the experiments as a huge microscope. So we use a particle beams as a microscope. A microscope. So we need very short wavelengths. So depending on the size of the atom, size of the particle, we need the appropriate wavelength to look into it. So as the size decreases, then the energy with which the particle, I mean, at which we can see the particle is also increases, as this the formula you might remember from E is equal to hc by lambda. So as the wavelength decreases, the energy increases. And this is the one of the reason we say particle physics, experimental particle physics, as sometimes the high energy physics, because we need to go to the high energy to look for the smallest particles. And now another thing is creating particles or new particles. So what we do is we collide particles with the available collision energy. What I say, why I say available? Because like because to go to the high energy, it's quite difficult. So we want to go as high as energy as possible, but we are limited by the technology and resources. So I said available collision energy corresponding to at least the rest mass of the new particle, and using, and this is a famous formula, E is equal to mc square. So if we want to produce a Higgs which mass is 125 GeV, so we at least the beam should have energy, the particle beam that I mentioned, it should have the energy of 125 GeV. Only then Higgs could be produced. Now, so as I motivated here, we need to look at, we need a microscope, and microscope are basically the particle beams. So for that, we here at CERN, we made a huge accelerator to answer these questions. So this, we can say, this is the one of the most brutal way in which we do the experiment. We take the two proton and move them into the speed of light in this 27-kilometer tunnel, and just collide them and analyze all the collected, I mean, whatever the coming from those proton collisions. So this is the 27-kilometer ring, which we say Large Hadron Collider, and this is this is at the France and Swiss border. Basically here it should be somewhere the France border. So it is situated at the France and Swiss border. This experiment is there, and in this line there are at several points the different experiments. 4 different experiments are there. So I'm working on one of the experiment there, and here, so there are the 2 different proton beam moving in the opposite direction. So basically here the 2028 bunches of the proton per beam, and we send it into the 70 eV energy. And in each proton bunch, there are 10 to the power 11 protons. So there are 10 to the power 11 protons in each bunch, and we just hit them together. And why it is 10 to the power 11 proton? Because like it's quite hard to just move the one proton from opposite direction and hit them. Then it is something like you are standing 11 kilometers away and trying to hit the 2 needle. I mean, throwing 2 needle from opposite direction, standing 11 kilometers away. So you can assume how difficult it is to just take 2 protons and collide it head to head. So we take 10 to the 11 protons and we just smash them together. So out of 10 to 11 proton, when they passes each other, like sometime they hit like 30 protons interact, sometimes 80 proton interacts. So the average is sometimes 60, 70. And this crossing rate is 40 million collision per second. So every second, 40 million collision is happening in this in this collider. And once this collision happen, and whatever the total amount of data we generate is roughly 40 terabyte per second. And here I computed from the Domo the roughly data which is generated by Google, WhatsApp, Facebook, including everything, is roughly 29 terabyte per second. So now you can imagine how much data we generated in our experiment. That is why in my second slide, I said that what we have is data. So we have huge amount of data, and we need to analyze it in a latest tools and techniques. So still I'm on giving some introduction. So now out of this is the LHC ring, but when the 2 proton beam interacts, then we detect them, whatever the amount of data it is throwing, these data is detected using a detector. And so this is one of the detector, compact muon solenoid. So this detector, so this is basically the this Large Hadron Collider is situated 100 meters underground. So at 100 underground, there are 4 different experiments. So one of this experiment is compact muon solenoid. So at the center of this detector, the 2 proton beam is going to collide with each other. And once they collide, we are going to look what are we are going to check the information collected by this detector, and the size of this detector you can size of this detector you can see, like this is quite huge. You can say a person size size in front of the detector. And then I'm going to show the aerial view of sorry. I'm going to show the aerial view of this detector. So what I mean, this is the aerial view. So once the 2 proton beam is going to collide, then we detect different particles using how it interact with the materials in the detector, and we are going to tag them as different particles like electron. Okay, if it is interacting like this, it is sorry, like the red line that you can see on some. I'm unable to use my mouse somehow. Sorry. Okay. Sometimes my mouse is visible, sometimes not. Okay, so there you can see the red line along the at the start on the extreme left. You can see the red line. So if it curve and going to detect in a green shaded area, which we say electromagnetic calorimeter, it should be the electron. Electron, and why it is bending, we have a superconducting solenoid magnet. A magnet which is in the blue color. So because of the magnet, and since electron have charge, so it bends. And the longest line which starts from the silicon tracker and which goes till the end is one of the particle that we call as muon. So it is the one of the least interacting particle, and it make this nice curve, and this nice curve is made by the magnet. And we need these curve to be there because we want to measure its momentum, because we want to know its energy, its momentum, and momentum cannot be measured without help of this magnets. So we have one of the best magnets on the earth. We are using here one of the largest and best magnets we are using on earth here in our experiments. Now we have enough physics background, so now we can able to move to the machine learning applications. So I hope when I move going to some detail, you should be able to at least understand a bit what we are doing and why we are doing here. So there are a few machine learning applications in high energy physics that we are doing here. I listed here, and one of the important point to note is the first workshop on machine learning in our field was held in 1990, and it was titled Artificial Intelligence in High Energy and Nuclear Physics. So you can assume that we are not started using machine learning now. So it was from long time in the past we were using this, but at this point of time, it is like we are using almost everywhere in our day-to-day life here at CERN, because now we have the computing resources with the use of GPU, GPU. We are able to utilize the latest tools and techniques available in the machine learning. So here are a few examples. We use like the event discrimination between the signal and background, how we try to identify. So using the machine learning, its signal shows something like this, background like this. We also use the different various available method in the different machine learning algorithms available, and we try to improve our performance in tagging different particles. For example, here's a top is a particle which is quite important in our field, and we sorry we were able to tag them tag them with nice purity and efficiency using the machine learning techniques. We also use the GANs, generative adversarial networks, for generating the Monte Carlo simulations, because these sometimes Monte Carlo simulations that we use is quite time consuming as well as the resource consuming, and these techniques give us the way to generate them with less resource and in quite time efficient manner. We also use them in data quality monitoring. As I said, every second there's 40 million collision is going to happen. So we need to continuously monitor the data while the collision is happening. If something is need to be worried, we need to look at it immediately and try to fix it, because even we miss 1 second of the data, it is going to cost like the hundred of thousands of Swiss francs. So it's the money is quite a lot. So we need to continuously monitor these data that we are taking. So here Also here we are exploring machine learning techniques to efficiently monitor the data. And moving to next, but why we are using machine learning? So as I said, there are many different things we are working on, but why? So one of the important thing is we are looking for a very subtle, we are looking for subtle signal in very messy environment at Hadron Collider. And like, okay, I have this messy environment. I will tell after a couple of slides. There I have a pic. So how messy it could be, you can see. And so we would like to draw a decision boundary between the signal and the background processes in the physics phase of space as precisely as we can do. And there's a huge amount of data processing that we require. So not only the state of art theory calculation, but we need to also exploit the latest tools and technique available in the data science and the machine learning techniques. As you know, we have data, and machine learning is basically all about learning from data. So it should definitely help. And the machine learning algorithms are generally, we can say that it is a universal approximator. So it should do our job quite well. And it helps in many areas of high energy physics, as I mentioned in the last slide, and their particle identification, event simulation, background detection, and many more things. So LHC is quite amazing and the biggest machine in the history of particle physics so far. And to realize its full potential and extract the best possible physics output from it, we need to use the machine learning techniques. And just one thing to mention, all these images, all these things are, these images are linked with the links for these related papers. So in case you guys are interested, you can so check. And moving to next slide. So just to have an analogy, because you might be worried like how we use the machine learning. So I want to give an analogy from the industry and in our physics research. So for example, credit card fraud detection. So you might have heard about it. So in the credit card fraud detection, what we do, you guys are doing like to discriminate between fraud and the real transaction, because we don't want any transaction to be fraud. So we would like to grab a signal, a alarm in the bank once a fraud transaction is made. And which is the reason sometimes bank got alarm and we got a call from our banks that, okay, did you do this transaction or not? Only this sometime, because sometimes there is a misidentification. So similarly, what we do here is to discriminate between signal and background. So what is signal? I also mentioned a couple of times in my previous slide, but you might be wondering what is signal. This word I'm taking many times. So interesting processes or physics that we are looking, we say it as a signal. For example, let's say we are looking for the dark matter candidate. There should be a particle. If our theory is fine, then there should be a particle which is mediated via which is going to mediate the dark matter. So there should be that particle. So we want to focus on that. So that is our signal. If it is there, it should be the signal. And whatever the rest, apart from our interesting process, whatever is there is background. So now, what is signal in credit card fraud detection? I'll say this sentence is a bit confusing, but so in the credit card fraud detection, the signal is a fraud transaction done by a person. Why I'm saying it is a signal fraud transaction? Because bank wants to alarm. I mean, machine learning should alarm a bank once someone is doing a fraud transaction. So if a person is doing a real transaction, then bank don't want to hear any alarm, because there are millions of transactions in a day. So we don't want to hear millions of the alarm. We just want to hear alarm which is suspected to be a fraud transaction. So it should be very less. And it is something like looking for this particular, in this image, looking for a particular person. So this is a signal. and everything else, all other person are our background. So you can imagine how difficult it is. For example, if I turn it into a number, so the world population is 7.6 in 10 to the 10, while the very rare decay is, the probability is 3.6 in 10 to the minus 9. So you could imagine how difficult it is to identify the correct person or a correct signal, correct person in this image or a correct signal in the technical term that I'm taking. Now, I'm giving the another analogy, which you can see is, you can tag it as an image recognition technique. So I write bubble chamber days. So the bubble chamber was one of the big chamber in which is filled with some liquid, and once the pressure is changes, and once some particle is passing by, the cosmic particle coming, and once the particle is passing by, it is going to capture an image using through a camera. So once the image is captured, so on the top right, you can see that a lady is sitting and looking at an image and trying to identify the physics and try to understand physics from that image, and trying to to grab a particle, any new particle, if there is. And a small part of that picture is seen in the blue image on the top left. So you can see that it, okay, by looking at this, we can try to identify, okay, this, what this could be, what this particle could be based on the tracks it is there. Now, so earlier we were doing like this, scanning just taking images and looking at the image and so. So basically, what is that? Basically, it is an image recognition. So like we have many pictures and we try to identify, okay, this is my father, this is my mother, this is my children. So it is kind of like that, but it's a bit complicated one. So similarly, but today in the machine learning, we are doing as an image recognition. So machine can able to tag the person. Now why we need now the those image recognition technique? So since now we moved away from the photographic to the collision data that I mentioned, like every second we are going to have 40 million proton bunch crossings. So every second we have 40 million pictures. And one picture at the bottom right, you can see the picture, how complex that picture is. Like there is a, I mean, huge jargon of like the thousands of the particles. So it's not possible for a human to sit, and even we can't have the view to because those particles are quite separated in the space also. So our eye cannot resolve them in micrometers, millimeters. It's we are unable to separate those particles by our naked eye. So this leads to the marriage between the high energy physics and computing once we moved from the photographic to the collision data. So for the collision data, we need electronics detector to identify those collisions. So this leads to the marriage between the high energy physics and computing. So we started using the computing and the programming for understanding these collision and grabbing all the useful information. Now next change is we started using artificial intelligence to efficiently grab, to increase our efficiency and purity in this complex environment. Environment. So, so here especially the task varied from the identifying human faces that you guys might be doing to identify human faces. So instead of identifying human faces, what we do to isolating particles into which Higgs boson is decaying. For example, there's a Higgs boson, it is decaying into some particle. So we want to identify those particles from the background of identical many particles coming from different processes. So in this messy environment, there is only one line which is going to say Higgs, and it is decaying into two different particles. So we need to correctly identify that out of this complex environment. So we use image processing for this. Now, again, I'm just mentioning, I already told this, but I'm mentioning in word, like machine learning in CMS, we use at many different places as event reconstruction or selection. So here the classification algorithm helps how, because we need to extract a small signal event, as I said, in the one event from this complex environment on the bottom right. Particle identification and tagging. So if one line is the line that we are seeing, is it belong to Higgs particle or top, or which particle it is, because there are many particles, so which particle is it? So we want to also tag, and we want to know what are the particles appeared in our each collision. Monte Carlo simulation. So Monte Carlo event simulation is basically to understand the data from the detector. What we do, we also try to simulate those proton-proton collision, and we want to try to analyze and compare it from the data collected by the detector. So if our understanding is correct, our theory that we generated the Monte Carlo using the simulation and what we are getting from the detector should we match to each other. So for that we generate a huge amount of Monte Carlo, and it is too much time consuming and CPU intensive. Even one sample that we need, sometimes it takes months of time to generate. So here these generative networks are helping, and there are several papers we have published on these. Then imagine calorimeter. So basically calorimeter, there the particle deposit energy. So that can be also viewed as an image process, images, and where images processing can help a lot. Similarly, tracking for the particles, we need duplicate removal, quality selection. Then data quality monitoring. So we need outlier rejection, because whenever we are taking data, we don't want anything is going to mess with those things. So if anything, any outlier is there, we need alarm immediately. And trigger. So trigger we need for improve the capturing of interesting event in the limited time in microsecond using machine learning method on using FPGAs. You might know about it, field programming gate arrays. So one thing I forgot to tell in couple of back slide, that we get approximately we generate 40 terabyte of data per second. But you know, we don't have too much resource, especially we are not like not too much money person, especially in research like Google, Facebook, etc. So we don't have resource to keep all those events. Even though if we have money, it is not worth to keep all those events, because our interesting physics process is not there in all 40 terabyte of data. So we apply what is this trigger to just keeping only interesting events, interesting information from one PP interaction. In interaction. So whatever the interesting event, interesting information we see, it is, we keep that information, else we don't keep. So so we don't save all the 40 terabyte of data. Okay. Now I move to few example where machine learning method we are using. I'm just giving two different examples. So we try to distinguish between prompt photon from Pi0. Pi0 is a particle named pion, and beam halo. So you can see the three different images of image deposition in the eCal. We say it as an electrocalorimeter. It is one of the sub detector of the big CMS detector that I showed in one of my introduction slide. So the prompt photon looks like something like this, in which we are interested. There is a Pi0 pions which decays into two different photons. It looks like this. There is a beam halo. This we don't want. This actually what happened, as I said, there are 10 to the power 11 protons in one bunch. So you can imagine like proton, it means it has positive charge. So as you all know that the same charge repel each other and opposite charge attract each other. So since we have 10 to the power 11 protons in a very tiny area, so you can imagine how hard it is them to keep them in a very tiny area. Okay. So we need to consider this in a quite tiny area. So sometime some particle, some proton escape from there and try to hit the beam pipe in which the protons are traveling. And whenever it hits the beam pipe, then we see a halo, which we see as beam halo. So that looks like this in our detector. So there are three similar things. So we don't want these things to come into our prompt photon. So we need to discriminate between these images. And there's a okay. So on the top left, how this image representation of these images looks in theta phi plane. Actually, here on the x-axis, this is theta, but theta is changed into something else, which is we say rapidity. So it is eta, but it is corresponding to the theta and phi. So the theta phi plane, these images are there. So you can see on the top left is prompt photon, converted photon, how it looks like, then pi 0 and beam halo photons. So there are different ways. So now what we do, we have these images. Now we set up the machine learning setup and try to identify among different images. So on the bottom left is basically you can see on the up I added the the details of network. It is not full, but at the bottom is you can see the interesting plot. On the bottom left is the ROC separation for the prompt photon and the beam halo. So especially here we trained the two different networks. So one network separates prompt photon and beam halo photons on the left. So you can see this machine learning is quite well to discriminate between those two processes. And on the bottom right, we trained different machine learning algorithm to for giving a separation between pi 0 and prompt photons. So it is something like we want to discriminate between like cat, dog, and let's say donkey, and we try to tag them 3. So we generally first train one machine learning algorithm which distinguishes between the cat and dog, and another cat and dog, and another machine learning where it discriminates between dog and donkey. So now we have two different, and we try to combine, we try to use this information and get the useful information. Next, I am going to add the convolution neural network for the track seed filtering that we are using. So here I'm not going to give the details about the convolution neural network. As I think you guys already know about this thing. So I'm just going into the details of it. So as I said, this is a high level trigger. So CMS trigger is basically, this trigger is basically a method of capturing the interesting event. So they said there are 40 megahertz rate. So every second there are 40 million collision is happening. So we designed two level of system to identify capturing interesting events. So out of there is a first level step is level 1. So there are 40 megahertz. So 40 megahertz rate is going in, but at the end of the day we just keep 100 kilohertz. So we apply some algorithm, and based on that algorithm it selects okay which one is interesting event, which one is not. So the one which is not interesting, just remove it. So we keep only interesting, so 100 kilohertz, and then it passes to the next step, which we say high level trigger, where the rate is going to reduce from 100 kilohertz to 1 kilohertz at the end. So basically how it does, it happens in the 3 steps. 3 steps. One is as shown in the upper image, like the seeding. So it starts it try to construct using the few pixels of the hits. It try to construct a seed construction. So it try to take the block of the track candidate, define the initial estimate of the trackers using the few, and then whatever it finds fine, then it try to propagate it using a filter technique, which we say Kalman filter, but we can leave that word. So using some filter technique, we filter it out and we build a track, and then again that track are fitted and marked as the quality flag, if it is a good track or not. So there we we for these each pixel hit we generate a 15 by 15 square matrix using the local x and y information. So these are the images that we generated using the local x and y information. So they look like 2D images. So then we apply the convolution neural network. So here here is a brief details about the convolution neural network, how the network is designed and what's happening. Now I just skip this slide and move to the next one, is the result. So here you can see on the left is on the left you can see the accuracy versus number of sorry. On the left, you can see the accuracy versus number of epoch, and on the right, you can see that see the ROCs. So you can see that these models are well trained, and we were able to identify the good tracks quite well with a large ROC area. Now I'm moving to summary. So summary. So the machine learning algorithms are already transforming our world. The way we move, how we shop, how we heal ourselves, selves. So these days machine learning is everywhere. Everywhere we take picture from our mobile. Even the machine learning model is running on the background to improve the images automatically. And in the context of LSC data analysis, we use it also everywhere from the start of the proton collision running, and at the end of the final result. We are using them everywhere. And also we are using the GANs for event simulation. So, but we can't use machine learning tool as just black box. A detailed understanding of both the physical and the algorithmic aspect of the problem is quite essential. Now, this is just a summary slide, but I don't want to end generally here. As I think, as with the Bhavesi mentioned, we need to use this research for the public. So because we are using for these research, we are using the taxpayers' money. So why we want to spend those taxpayers' money on this billion-dollar project? So, so instead of ending at summary, I just want to give few more information how it benefit to the public, general public, because this is one of the important question because we are using our research. We are using money for the taxpayers' money, for the public. And in what general public thought, scientists work because they are fascinated by the universe. Okay, they want to know how this universe works, how the galaxy form. But what is the benefit to unpin those answers, how God created those universe and worlds in our life? There is a corona time is going on. So okay, this time is quite complex, but even especially in our country, there is a huge lack of medical facilities and many more things. So why to invest money in this billion-dollar project instead of using those money elsewhere in the useful work? So basically what happens while working for our interest? Okay, it's perfectly fine. And this is the way we work in physics because we are just interested by the universe, how this universe works. But while working on our interest, we develop the knowledge that serve the humanity. For example, develop devices such as GPS tracker and a smartphone. And this story repeats in countless domains for centuries or more. Now, I will come to just the impact of high energy physics in which I'm working on. So this CERN, whatever work that we do here at CERN is subjected to the economic impact assessment since 1970 with one of the recent cost benefit analysis in the economics. And at the end of the day, the conclusion was that there is 92% probability that the benefit will exceed cost even when we attach very conservative figure of zeros to some organized scientific discoveries. And the roughly in the amount of money, so the every dollar spent on the high energy physics, we get roughly $1.8 back. So we gain whatever money is invested on the research, we get more than that money. So few important CERN impact are, one of them is invention of World Wide Web at CERN. So WW was invented at CERN, but we at that point of time we were not thought of this impact. So at that point of time, it was just driven by the need of better communication among the scientists around the world, because this is a huge experiment like even one country can't do. We need many countries to collaborate and money to do this the high energy physics research. So it was motivated by just better communication among scientists. Now another important impact is hadron therapy, which aims at treating tumor with beams of proton and light ions. Medical imaging, imaging it benefit, as you know, we benefit a lot using PET scanners. It is quite fast. Sorry. Then software simulating particle interaction in the detector. So basically this software for simulating particle interaction that we see, that I mentioned, that Monte Carlo generator. So those software that we developed, it is used to calculate the precise radiation dose for cancer treatment. So doctors can plan how much dose one need for a particular treatment. So another is pixel detector technologies. It was developed at CERN. So it is used as medical diagnosis, industrial processes, X-ray based material analysis. You must have heard a couple of years back that the scientists developed the 3D X-ray. So it was quite fascinated. So doctors can use those quite useful information for our hand. Let's say we broke our hand, so we can get quite useful information using 3D imaging technique. Now global IT companies. So even global IT companies take benefit from CERN. So those global IT companies like Intel, Huawei, they use CERN as a test bed for optimizing stress testing for their latest product. For Intel chips i7. So these days, so before finalizing their product, they need intensive stress testing. So CERN is one of the place where they are testing their latest products. Then worldwide LHC computing grid. So we are also using the computing grid for our analysis, because there are more than 40-50 countries. Our scientists are there, and we work collaboratively with among ourselves. So we already have our worldwide computing grid. So CERN is one of the biggest producer and consumer of big data in the world. And at the end of the day, the $1 billion price is worth to pay from the taxpayers' money thing, because here is this figure is also interactive. So the link from where I got this. So the benefit, the cost, which is like the money that we got, let's say, is 22.3 billion, and the benefit is more than that. So benefit is always more than what is consumed, what is provided to us. So that's all. Thank you from my side.
Thank you, sir, for this enlightening and like presentation and all. Thank you so much for giving our students, our faculties, and
Also
everyone.
my yeah.
So we have few questions from our participants, audience. Sir Aryan Mehta is asking this. Sir, we all know gravity is a force. For every other fundamental forces, we have discovered a force particle responsible for it, but not for gravity. Graviton has been theorized but not discovered. Why is it that? Does that mean gravity a unique force or graviton's existence is unlikely?
Okay. So I will say gravity indeed is an unique force, but if we look at the macroscopic world, then in the macroscopic world, like you guys must have heard about the quantum mechanics.
Yes.
Quantum mechanics. So you know the classical physics is unable to describe the quantum mechanics, but quantum mechanics, why classical physics is not able to, so because at the when we go at the small scale, then at that scale our classical mechanics fails. It does not verify our experiment. So we need another theory. We develop a quantum mechanics where it describes quite well the very small particle, but quantum mechanics can able to explain the classical mechanics. How apple fall from the tree, quantum mechanics can explain. So it is, I can say it is a generalized physics. So similarly, I will say the gravity, when we look gravity at the macroscopic world, how galaxy are interacting with each other, how we are quite stable at one position and the earth and it is revolving around the sun, and how sun is revolving in our galaxy. So these things are quite well understood at the macroscopic level. But when we go at the microscopic level, and there's a special theory that we say about the gravity is a GTR. So the that when we go at the macroscopic level, or when we try to merge the gravity and the quantum mechanics, then there is a huge problem. And even till now, the theory that we have is like not 100% satisfactory, and we are still trying to understand the gravity. So at macroscopic level, we understand quite well, but at the microscopic level, we did not understand gravity till now. And at the quite early slide, I added in the, like I will say, the periodic table of the particle physics, I uh, I added the gravity, but that graviton, like one of the unanswered question of particle physics is this graviton. So this graviton is not yet included into our theory. There is a huge issue when we try to include gravity into the standard model theory of particle physics, which describes the world quite well. So yes, indeed, we need to understand a lot about it. Till now, we did not see any evidence of this graviton, and as per our theory, it suggests we need quite huge amount of energy to prove the graviton. So even now, if as per the theory suggestion, we can't discover it into the current collider.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So we have one more question from Ria. So you said that we are not sure that the discovered particle is Higgs. When will be sure of the same? And if we are not sure, then how did they announce that it is Higgs?
Okay, so this is quite good question. One of the thing is, okay, what we were looking. So the particle that we found looks like Higgs. Its property looks like Higgs. I mean, whatever the theoretical prediction is there it satisfies every evidence till now. It did not conflict with any of the our like the theoretical model of this standard model. So with the standard model, it is perfectly, not perfectly, but almost, I will say 99.998% sure that this is the Higgs. This should be the Higgs boson, but there are uncertainty is there that there could be an additional Higgs boson which is there, and like there are several more evidences. How I should say? Okay, I'm just trying to simplify. So there's like whatever the major properties that we see till now is hinting toward the Higgs boson, but there are several more properties of the Higgs boson that we should confirm, and if it satisfies all those then it should be the Higgs boson, but still there are many unanswered questions. For example, this. So the thing is, there could be one Higgs boson or there could be many Higgs boson. There are theories which suggest there are more than one Higgs bosons. So there are still room for either minor corrections of this Higgs boson, or there could be some particle which is more or less similar to this Higgs boson, and we did not find that particle till now, and we found this one. But it looks quite similar to the Higgs boson that we are looking for.
Okay, sir. I guess they might be clear with the question. So we have one question, last question from Jugal. Good afternoon, sir. What would be a good starting point for an interested and motivated engineer to start with ML in HEAP, assuming they already have an elementary and working knowledge in ML?
Okay, so I think I forgot. I wanted to add this information in my slide, but I forgot. Okay, so one of the quite starting point and interesting starting point is the Kaggle. So if you go on Kaggle, I think you must have heard about the Kaggle. So on Kaggle, there is a Higgs challenge. So CERN announced a Higgs challenge on Kaggle in, I think, 2012 or 2013. So on Kaggle, you can find the Higgs challenge. And one of the computer scientists who got awarded for this, he does not have any physics knowledge. He was not working in physics. He was a computer engineer, and he got awarded this challenge. He was able to improve the Higgs identification by several factors. So one of the point where one can start is from the Kaggle, and Kaggle, I think there are two more data set available, couple of more physics data set available based on this Higgs and related. So one can start there. So one can get introduction from there, and then CMS, CERN engineer also make our data public. So data is public, and it is it is on our website. So one can just download the data. One can find all the basic information about the data. Now, once you have data, I think, and you have the basic features of those data, then I think you guys know how to deal further. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So I guess we are done with most of the questions. So thank you, sir, for enlightening and wonderful presentation on right way to introduce machine learning and physics. So on behalf of Shine and Anchor Kachi Engineering College, I have a small token of appreciation for our speaker, and please accept it with our sincere thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to interact with you.